Hello,
Rafe. So good to see you.
Trisha. How are you, my friend?
I'm breathing.
Good. Hey, how are you doing? How's it being a new mom? I know, right? All the feelings and emotions, the hormones. My God. How are you sleeping?
I love everyone's confused faces.
Baby's so beautiful.
I know it is.
It's gorgeous. I understand that you had some problems that first night with it, wanting to cooperate and wanting to play with you. And
yes.
I'm just assuming you adopted an animal.
Yeah.
It's worse.
Listen, now that you're a stay-at-home mom, listen, hon, I have an opportunity for you. For hardworking moms at home. They're yoga pants that are infused with essential oils. And there's no big commitment. You
just like a $5,000
startup just a fee. $5,000 startup fee.
No big deal. So I got a PlayStation. I got a PlayStation 5.
Oh, I'm jealous.
Which my adorable boyfriend has named Priscilla.
Priscilla, Queen of the Coven, maybe, or something, kind of like Priscilla, Queen of the Desert.
We have a lingerie store in town called Priscilla McCall's, so immediately my brain is like undies, I'm good.
Well, it is a sexy machine. It is. It deserves.
It
looks hot.
Love it. It's been it's given me some issues for a little while. Because we got the digital version without the disk drive, so it kept trying to download previous games that I had with discs, and they're like, we can't play this game because there's no disc. And I'm like, no shit, I know that. I've been revisiting my friends Ellie and Joel, torturing myself.
I saw that. You had to, right?
I had to. That's not the first thing I played, though, which is shocking. I played Resident Evil 8 first because it downloaded first. So,
nice.
It looks so good. Everything looks amazing on it, and it's consuming a lot of my time right now, which is a good thing.
Just like a new baby does. This bit could go on for a long time. It really it works.
I had to post something on my Instagram story where I was like, y'all, I did not become a mother. It's a joke. There's a PlayStation joke because I'm very adamantly child free. Y'all.
That's why I was like, I just assumed we went to adopting an animal. That's where my mind went.
I wish. I'm always ready for a new cat.
It was a little bit disappointing you didn't do a catastrophic gender reveal party.
We are going to take a picture.
I like the pen.
Yeah.
We are going to take a picture at some point where we're holding it and just kissing on it. I'm like, oh,
so
funny. Because we're both adamantly child free. So
I honestly think if you could find a photographer, a friend of yours that's a photographer in the area, they may just cut you a sweet deal just to do it. Listen, usually newborn sessions are between $500 and $1,000, but this thing I'll do for $100 because just to put it on.
Fly me down, I got you.
I'll do it for a 6-pack.
Yeah, right.
Well, Amber, we do have some friends in Rochester, so I'm sure we'll be coming up at some point.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Let me know when.
I will. So good to see you, by the way. I'm sorry you missed last month's.
I know.
Sesh.
I misjudged the time.
Oh, good.
So, of course, the one time I actually finished the book, too. The one time I finished the book, I don't show up. And then all the times I show up, I'm like, well, I tried finishing.
Well,
this
spoiler. This is what I didn't read.
Wow.
Yeah, I think I am technically, where am I? I'm on 128, but I was gonna read till 179 and then skip some and then read like the last 50 pages because like I just was like,
Yeah.
spoiler.
Wow.
Going through it.
Like, and then also just like we went really post-it crazy too
Oh,
And highlighter.
because I have many feelings.
this book is clinical.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, what was it? I've already recommended it to my therapist, and she's gonna go plan to buy her own copy to read it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because she used to do a lot of social work
Mm,
and like work in like essentially one of like kind of like something similar to some of the clinics they talk about. And here
Right.
with like the mental health instead of sending them to incarceration, and then Rochester closed it down because money.
Money. As
And
it
she would
goes.
tell, yep. But and so I was like reading her some of the stuff in here too, because like she understands a lot of it, and she's like waiting for me to leave, aren't you? So you can go to Amazon and order your own copy.
Also,
Because like she was like
hello.
really
Sorry, my internet is
Yes,
really
hello.
bad today. Sorry. Hello, Lauren. I saw Kitty. Welcome back.
I
Also,
know.
hi, Leanne. I haven't seen you in years. I hope you're well. I'm like, oh my God.
Yes,
Leanne.
it's been a really long
Hi.
time.
Oh my God. Hi, baby.
What an orange bean.
I just finished playing Stray, so
it's so fun.
It's so good.
It's so fun.
just to fill the void.
It's so good. We
It
signed
really
up for
is.
the PS Plus premium, so we were able to play. We were able to just download it. It like came with that,
Ooh.
whatever the hell that is. So, yeah, I was loving it. So sad at the beginning. I was
Yeah,
like,
like,
I know what
Once
happens.
I have money, that's what I want to get.
I know what happens when I like don't like it. Yeah, sorry. This month's discussion's gonna be really. July just like was a weird month for me. Let's be honest. July's been very busy.
Don't worry, I got you.
Very busy. I'm very
Just saying,
tired.
don't worry, I got you.
Possibly broke my foot on the 4th. So things have just been
Good job.
off. Yeah, if I told you how, you would be even more disappointed.
Please tell us how.
I just jumped in a pool and it was really shallow and I slammed the bottom of the pool.
Nice. Don't worry, I once had a friend. You think that's bad? I once had a friend who, you know how like there's like way back in like in the days there's like the ball pits with like those little like squishy colored balls. So anyways, I used to work at a summer camp when I was in college. It's like 10 years ago
sweaty.
for kids and teens with special needs. And after one of the years ended, I was working there. Like we went to like it was like about half hours. I got in the middle of nowhere, but it was like this like fun center that had basically bought up a lot of the stuff from like a Discovery Zone when Discovery Zone went out of business. And my friend at the time, this is mind
At
you,
the time.
a man that's at least in his mid to late 20s.
There's a story there.
Oh yeah.
I'm very curious.
You know.
So there's like they had one of those like covered roundabout slide things and you would go down the slide and you'd land in the ball pit. Well, I guess we were all just hanging out, and like we're all people from our mostly from like our early to mid 20s. We all worked at this camp. And I guess he saw this little girl in the ball pit and he thought she was standing. She was sitting, but she thought he was standing. She's like, oh, that means that the ball pit's deep enough for me to jump into. So he climbed to the top of the slide, not like the top, but like the top of like the opening. And he's like, I'm going to like basically almost cannonball into this ball pit. And so he jumped into the ball pit. Well, she was sitting in it. So it was really only like that deep.
Oh.
And as a result, your ankle, which normally sits like this, proceeded to go like that. And the energy went all the way up his leg, broke his leg, and he ripped all the tendons off his ankle.
No.
Okay, so mine wasn't that bad.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You think yours is bad and embarrassing? And then I wasn't mad because then it meant that I went from being a volunteer for the next 2 weeks to actually being paid because they needed somebody to take his place.
But where your friend though assumed that it was. I know how deep the pool is. So like, why?
Because it's the 4th.
Did you say yes? Oh, I thought you were saying. Chris said yeah, and he wasn't talking to me. I thought he was. Anyway, sorry, housekeeping. Welcome to the Morbidly Curious Book Club. Hi, how are you?
We talk about things that apparently are not morbid.
Yeah, well, sometimes.
Broken bones are morbid.
This is true.
So yeah, the housekeeping though, if you hear screaming, it is not somebody I'm holding in like the closet. It is my darling significant other playing video games on our PlayStation.
So if we hear
Priscilla.
some screaming, it's just the child.
Yeah,
It's just
the
the
newborn.
child.
Yeah.
It's just a child. Don't call CPS. Okay.
Yeah, they will come up. They will show up very confused. So I think I'm good. We are discussing. I'm also live on TikTok. So if you see me look over here, that's because I'm talking to people on TikTok. Hello, friends. We're discussing Waiting for an Echo, The Madness of American Incarceration by Dr. Christine Montross. I did not read this book like at all. I got through until page 31, and the only reason I think is because I was so focused elsewhere this month and
on the child.
Well, we actually got the child last week, but now that has caused definitely one of the reasons that I've been very what's it called? Just out of it, distracted. I don't think there was anything wrong with. I got to page 57. Oh god. Did anybody finish the book? Okay,
If my parent had not caused me to revolt this week, I would have.
So I don't think there was. How do I word this properly? Well, I will say in the past like 2 weeks, I have started like 8 books, and I have not gotten past like page 50. I've just been elsewhere and trying to heal myself, take care of myself. I started working with my agent, which is really great, and I've been doing a whole lot with her, so I technically have like a job now, but yeah, I've been elsewhere, distracted. So
remember the little people.
yeah. I'm still a little person. But I appreciate everybody hanging out and talking about the book, whether you finished it or not. That's like a really big thing I love to stress about the book club is I love hanging out and chatting with you guys, no matter if it was finished or not, or even if you just like want to come to the Zoom because you like, want to see some people, because I understand that COVID is still, wreaking havoc in places. I finished it about an hour ago. Typically that's me.
I can just yell at everybody about my feelings about the incarceration system if we need to.
Listen, and that's I hope this book was kind of on par with Morbidly Curious. It doesn't really feel like it was, but maybe it was since I didn't finish it. I was worried about Ghosts of Tsushima. See, PlayStation. Oh my god. Ghosts of the Tsunami.
What happens when you're a new mom? Your baby
Oh,
you have baby brain. It's okay.
No, I haven't played it yet.
Oh, okay. Let me know how it is.
But
It's
I would
beautiful.
love to, because there's a director's cut.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Gosh.
I'm sitting on whether or not I want to buy, because like I have so many other games from the summer sale that PlayStation did.
Yeah, I just spent $150 the other day.
Oh, don't worry. I think I spent like 70.
New mom
spent
things,
like
just
70, 80
giving the money
between
away.
Stray.
Babies are
and the
expensive.
Because I got, what was it? I got the first Dishonored. So now I have all 3 Dishonoreds. And Bloodborne, because I was like, okay, I can get Bloodborne for $5. I can justify that.
Yeah.
Just in case I hate my life. And then Assassin's Creed Black Flag. And then the one game that like I didn't expect to love as much as I've been loving is the Outer Worlds.
It's so fun.
That's such a good game. I'm obsessed with it because it's like it reminds me like if like like the Horizon Zero Dawn Forbidden West and like Fallout had like a slightly kooky love child. That's what it reminds me of, because
Fair.
it's a very very femme-centric theme for the most part, but it also has a lot of like kind of like reminds me a lot of like a Fallout type world. But like I think like a lot of the characters you meet are women, and they're in like dude-centered positions, and a lot of them are also queer. So I was like, oh, I didn't expect any of that. Because I was just like, this game I picked up, I'm like, okay, you seem like something I would like. The reviews are really nice. We'll give it a shot. You're $13. And now I'm obsessed. So
sorry, I forgot that I needed to unplug my headphones so the Zoom, so people on my live could hear me. Yeah, I spent $150 the other day on the summer sale. It's fine. It's working out. But I honestly hate coming to book clubs when I haven't finished a book. Considering it's my book club.
Your boys are just gonna be quiet.
I do hope though it was with it. What I was saying was Ghosts of the Tsunami. I was worried it wasn't going to be morbidly curious enough, but it definitely was. So I was hoping though that this was, and it wasn't just, kind of an out there decision for us to read. But even if it wasn't, I still feel like there's a lot to learn from this. I have heard and seen some reviews of people not, I think we run into this a lot in this book club, especially with true crime books, where we feel maybe the author, and with Ghosts of the Tsunami, he did this perfectly, but we get kind of worried about the author maybe inserting themselves a little bit too much in the book. And I definitely saw some reviews of that where she was talking about herself quite a bit. And again, since I didn't finish it, and I absolutely hate not finishing books, I can't say that for certain, but I do hope that this was at least enjoyable. I know it's got a huge rating on Goodreads, like a 4.6 or something out of 5, which is bananas. So anyway, first things first, I hope it was morbidly curious, and I hope it fit with the theme of the book club. And 2, I do hope that those who read it or was close to reading it did definitely enjoy it. So if you finished it, I would love to hear your rating, whether that be 5 out of 5 or 10 out of 10 out of the scales, rating wise. What kind of something you learned from it? What is, are you recommending it to people? Kind of like, talk me through your thought process and how reading this book was.
I would say like, I haven't finished it, but like this is, I think, definitely like up there for like, I think out of like the ones like I've been here for, is like probably, I think, definitely my favorite, just because it caters to a lot of like, my interests, and I'd say like beliefs in a lot of things. And it also helped me kind of learn a lot more about, because like about the help like solidify a lot of like my beliefs on mass incarceration, et cetera, and how to kind of like, when talking to people, kind of how to back it up. And also it's the same, like I was gonna say, some of y'all saw like, my tabs and annotations for like Hell in the Heartland, and I'm like, we went like above and beyond with this one, like, because like I was like, where's it? I think there was one where it's like literally there was like 2 post-it notes on like opposing pages, like, oh yeah, here's some nice more annotation.
I do love that. I think the last time you joined, the last book club you were in, or the last book you were to discuss was Hell in the Heartland, and I know you definitely had some feelings about that book, so I'm very happy to hear that you really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, here we go. Here's the double posted pages.
We all had a lot of interesting opinions on Hell in the Heartland. I'm so sorry.
And like, I think for me, it's like with this one, it meant like there's a lot of it that I related to, just because like I mentioned it because like mental health is something that's always been very important to me as somebody with a lot of mental health issues. But then also, like I kind of mentioned it when we did Hell in the Heartland, like in Rochester, we've had at least 2 Black men who had mental health issues and had run-ins with police, and instead of them being properly treated or taken care of or potentially put into a hospital setting, they ended up dead,
right?
Because they were shot, and or one was strangled. And like one of them was Daniel Prude, and like he was coming in from Chicago, and I guess on the train in, he had some like mental health issues. I don't know specifically. So they kind of like had issues like coming in, and then he went straight to like one of our hospitals to get help because he was feeling suicidal. And basically, instead of that, when he got there, they like, it came out that like he got there, and instead of treating him as a patient, they treated him as a robbery suspect, despite the fact that he was been in Rochester maybe 2 hours, but they're saying that he was already a suspect in like a robbery from like the day before, and he didn't even live here. And so they didn't really treat him. They just kind of pumped him full of like, I think it was lithium, and just let him go instead of keeping him on a psych hold. And he went home to his brother and his brother's wife, because they were going to help him find a job here. And then, not knowing that the drugs that were still remnant that they had given were still in his system, he did some recreational drugs to try and like boost his mood up because he was still feeling depressed. And they reacted, and he had a mental health episode, which he ended up running down their street butt naked, screaming because he was still feeling suicidal. And his brother called the cops to help him, like saying like, please don't hurt my brother. Please don't hurt my brother. I just need help. We don't know what to do. And they showed up, and these 3 cops, mind you, it's March, 3-4 feet of snow on the ground. Literally in the video, one cop is doing push-ups off of his head. The other 2 put a spit bag on him, and he suffocates while wearing the spit hood because they're holding it too tight. And he asphyxiated, and they didn't even give him a blanket or anything. And then they just kind of left him there. And they covered it up for 6 months.
See, but like, what part about running through the streets naked means like felon?
Right.
Like, what part of that means, oh, I'm going to put this person in Gen Pop for a little bit and see what happens. You know what I mean? Like, I'd never really understood how the system worked, but from what I gathered from this book, it was like, oh, what the fuck? What's happening? Yeah. Why are we not actually taking care of people, and why are we instead throwing them into horrible conditions just for
jail
things to get worse? Oh, sorry. Also, I'm all over the place. I forgot to mention, with a couple people being in here, if you want to speak, there is an emoji, as you see Michelle is doing. Thank you, Michelle, for reminding me that, yeah, there is there's a button to press if you would like to.
A raise hand button.
A raise hand button. So, Michelle, if you want to go ahead and give us your thoughts, you are muted, by the way.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Hi.
Okay.
Yes.
So I commented on this whenever we were first starting this book. So I'm a police officer. One of the worst situations to be in is with somebody who desperately needs mental health services and just completely having their hands tied, because you see that this person needs mental help, but unless they are an imminent danger to themselves or others, we can't put them in the hospital. And then even when we put them in the hospital, they're only held for 24 hours, 48 hours. And if they don't have placement in the state hospital, then they get released. And I've literally watched somebody who cut his wrists and lost buku amounts of blood be released because he had COVID. So they wouldn't even hold the 48-hour hold. They just released them. And it's just extremely disheartening when there's no options. And we're being told, well, take them to the jail, because at the jail, they'll make sure that they get evaluated and they get those mental health services. And then nobody has to sit on them at the hospital. But even then, I mean, unless you get a really good mental health worker in that jail, they're just going to sit there in solitary pretty much, because they are a mental health person. So they're just being watched constantly and by themselves. And it's not a good situation for anybody. And that's where, you know, she's talking about the deinstitutionalization and things like that. There's nowhere for these people to go. And so they're being arrested left and right for criminal trespass or criminal mischief, or they're damaging property. And like the only option is put them in jail. There's not anywhere to take these people. There's not anywhere that will take these people. There's no good solutions for them as far as inpatient goes, because those state hospitals just don't have the beds for them. And it's just, it's gross. I mean, I've called an apartment manager to unlock the door for a tenant because she was trespassing at the gas station across the street because she lost her keys to her apartment. She didn't have the wherewithal to get that situation figured out for herself. And so they were mad at me that I didn't take her to jail. I'm not taking her to jail. I'm going to get her into her house. And it's just, there's not solutions for these people. And it's bad. It's very
Are
bad.
you coming over, sir?
So Catherine said 4.75 out of 5. Loved it. Couple comments on TikTok. Somebody said I'm a few books behind. Currently reading Ghosts of the Tsunami. It's amazing. I love that book. If y'all haven't read that, we read that. When did we read that? Last month? Time is a construct. It's great. The topic is so important, but I completely lost track of time and did not get far into this one. Yeah, that's the thing. It's like I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with it. It just didn't really grab my attention, which is so shitty to say about a nonfiction book because it's like it's just facts. So it's like, what about it didn't grab your attention? I think I was just way too preoccupied. But Amber, you had your hand up, and then Ralph, you had your hand up.
Oh. I was saying, going kind of back to where she was, I think Michelle, was that Michelle? My brain is like saying about like we had, it was this other case was like, okay. And I was like saying the same thing with us is like we had another one where it's like he had a history of mental health issues and his grandma passed away. He was at her funeral, which triggered he had a mental health episode. And I guess he was just wandering the streets of one of our suburbs, and that suburb's police found him. And instead of taking him home, they literally drove him to Rochester and dropped him off on the street in front of a homeless shelter and told RPD, he's your problem now. And told that to the homeless shelter. So they brought him into the homeless shelter for a little bit. And to this day, something happened in that shelter. We don't know what it is because they will never tell us. But then he left the shelter and supposedly, and then tried to come back, I guess, at 3 a.m. They said he broke into the shelter, which you saw the doors on the shelter. You cannot break into this thing. You can only open the doors from the inside. And they're like, he grabbed a knife and tried attacking people. There's no access to the kitchen either. And then, so they called the cops, and on like the cops' body cam, you literally hearing him saying like, please shoot me. I want to die. I want to die. Like, I don't want to be here anymore. Yeah. Please kill me. And that's what the cop did. The cop was there for 5 minutes, shot him 5 times. While this like 23-year-old kid who just lost his grandma was screaming, I want to die. Please kill me. And like, that was like, I think that was the most heartbreaking one for a lot of us. Cause it's like, you didn't even try. Like, you could hear him on the body cam talking about like, and it was a known thing. It was like, and like, it was like so much is like, you're like, you didn't even try to show this kid compassion. Not even the homeless shelter.
And that's another. And it's like, does she go into detail at all about homeless shelters in this book? Does she?
Not as much as, not so far as I read.
Okay.
I'm currently on.
Not really her field, right? That's not really.
Just started chapter 8, the lost people. But yeah, I'm like, they kind of talk about how, yeah, she like talks about like, you know, how like sometimes like, you know, homelessness, like, because like I was like also talk about like how like homelessness and like, you know, poverty and addiction and like not having affordable housing and jobs that are paying a living wage, all these things are like the root causes of a lot of like the like, you know, violence and crimes and mental health things that people end up going through because like, you know, because of the way our society views everything. It's like, and like, and you can't solve your violence issues and your incarceration issues and all of those things by doing things like, you know, funding things after the fact. You need to fund like, you know, having affordable housing. You need to fund addiction centers. You need to fund neighborhood options and social welfare and like those types of things, because then if people are fed and housed and employed and sober and like their communities are thriving and healthy, that's how your poverty and your crime and your violence goes down, because that's where so much of it has been proven to technically start. And it just kind of bubbles over, because when you're like, if you don't have enough to eat, you're going to lash out, or you're going to have to go find less than legal means to find your food or pay your bills or do anything. And which then leads to less than legal, like, what's the word I'm looking for?
Like, yeah,
like, retribution and like responses that like aren't exactly positive. And like, for example, like again in Rochester, like we have a police budget of 100 million. Every social welfare project or like program here doesn't have a budget that goes above 20 million. We own an MRAP. Why do we need an armored mine detecting vehicle? We own an LRAD, which is a sound cannon developed for warfare in the Middle East. We don't need that, but God forbid we feed our homeless or have affordable and cheap addiction counseling and centers to help people get sober. Like, although we did just do one thing that was really cool that I hope helps a lot, is we started putting out it's almost like the Narcan vending machines.
Oh yeah.
Where you can get like the free Narcan for anybody who needs it, like just like out on the street. I forgot how many there are, but there's a bunch of them. And I remember that was something that's like, I hope helps a lot, and we get more of that going, because like that's one of our big issues here, is that we just have so much addiction issues.
So Ralph had a little emoji up, and then Leanne, then
my emoji is still up.
You're good. So go ahead, Ralph.
There we go.
Well, I finished the book, but I had the opportunity that, I think this sounds morbid more than anything. I got it for Christmas. It was on my wish list. Somebody bought Waiting for an Echo for me for Christmas.
Santa, you mean. It's Santa.
Thank you, Santa Claus, for this great book. So I had a lot of time to read it, and it's an extremely important book. It goes into exhaustive detail. What's interesting is it doesn't give a lot of answers, as much as it just says. I think it's a lot of time presenting a problem, which is really unique. You know what I mean? It doesn't, it's proselytizing that we have a problem and it's a major issue. It does talk to some general extent, as the book goes on, as to, here are some cities and some places that, are doing things good and everything like that. But I have family in law enforcement. I have a really good friend of mine who started it back in my old state of Ohio. Most of the county sheriffs actually start as corrections officers before they can become county sheriffs. And so I after I read the book, I pinged him on Facebook and I said, hey, I just want to chat with you about this, because I'd love to just hear what you think, and just about some of the things. And he and I had a really good conversation, and he talked a lot about the fact that in Dayton, Ohio, he worked for Montgomery County, that in the late 80s, early 90s, one of the, this kind of piggybacks on what's already been said, one of the really large mental health hospitals closed because of funding. And there was nothing able to take its place.
Right.
And even at that time, they were saying, this is going to pose an issue. This is going to pose a problem. There are going to be people who are going to be incarcerated or are going to be out in the streets that they just need help. They just need services. They need someone to listen to them and someone to help them get through these things. And what my buddy said was really telling. And Michelle, I almost kind of love to hear your thoughts on this too. He said, for all the training we go through, all the de-escalation and all this,
As a correctional officer? Oh my
We,
god.
well, as both a correctional officer and a county sheriff, he said, we get, he said, I think maybe 2 to 5% of our actual training addresses dealing somebody having a mental health crisis. And I mean, that was just his kind of just baseline of like everything that he has to renew annually, everything that he has to re-up, and all the continuing education that he has to do to keep certifications and everything. But he said in my, on a given 8 to 10 hour shift, 80% of the people I come across are having a mental health crisis. And yet my training doesn't prepare me for that. We know how to look for somebody who is having a drug, having an overdose or something like that. But in terms of mental health crises, we are not really trained how to properly take care of that. And there are some counties and some states that are implementing, that in some departments that some officers have like advanced training and some things like that, dealing with those issues and helping to de-escalate them, specialized training, but they are an exception as opposed to a rule. And it's just, I don't know, it's a hard book. And I reread it so that I would be ready for this, and I just forgot how hard it was because it's sad. And now that so many prisons are now for profit, I don't think we're going to see an answer really soon. But also, as soon as we get through people to raise hands, I would love to hear, Michelle, your perspective in terms of like, what your training has been, because I know at least for my friend in Ohio, it's been sorely lacking.
I have a correctional officer friend in Kentucky, and I haven't spoken to him in a while, but knowing the state, he might have some interesting things to say. Should have reached out to him. I haven't talked to this way in a while.
I imagine.
Great state of Kentucky. Sorry, is anybody here from Kentucky besides my Grammy? Leanne.
I was from Southern Ohio, which might as well have been Kentucky.
That's true. That's true. I forget how close they are. Leanne, so nice to see you. Hi, thanks for joining.
Hi, thanks for having me. So excited. It's been a long time.
I know. I hope you're well.
Yes, doing fabulous over here.
Are you still in North Carolina?
I am still in North Carolina, yes. I live in Calabash, which is right at the border of South Carolina, so I'm all the way down here.
Right, well, I'm back in my hometown. Living the dream in Statesville.
Well, just North Carolina in general.
Listen, I miss the Wii so much, dude. I miss it every day. I need to go back up there at some point.
I do. I do miss it.
So thanks for joining us. What'd you think? Did you finish it?
I did finish it. I thought it was a phenomenal book. I really enjoyed watching it. I enjoyed reading it. I have a background in social work. I have a BSW and an MSW, and so I've read, I feel like, quite a bit of literature on mass incarceration. Our Prison's Obsolete by Angela Davis is really good, if anyone wants to read it. But
Angela Davis.
Yes, my favorite chapter was 12, which was Better Neighbors, which is where she talked about Norway, which kind of going off kind of what Ralph said. I interpreted it as a solution, and so that's what I appreciated about it. Like, I feel like when she was talking about it and her experience there and how the prisons are run, I was like, oh, this is what she thinks the solution should be, and that's how I read it. Some of the other things that stood out to me was the Neutral Loaf. I can't really seem to get that out of my head.
Neutral Loaf?
Yeah, so I mean, if you haven't finished the book, I think she talked about this kind of at the end, where like a lot of the food that they eat, that prisoners, I don't know if she specifically said if it's only in those in solitary confinement, and they kind of picked and choose, but it's basically just like a bunch of food that has nutrients to meet like the requirements. It's like all blended up and put in a loaf, and that's what they're eating. And I just can't, for some reason, that really stuck with me, like just eating blended up food like an animal, like it's so inhumane. and atrocious. It's disgusting. And also a lot of things that I thought about while reading this is like what a privilege it is to read it and to learn about it from this side, as opposed to it being my lived experience.
Right.
But and I also bought, I did buy another one of her books that she wrote. Forgot what it was called because I really liked her style of writing, and maybe because I consider myself like an academic, like I resonated with that a lot. So
Well, I think you said you had a master's, so I think that counts.
yes, sometimes. So,
I have a film
like,
degree. So.
Is it even real? Yes. Did it really happen? I don't know.
I remember I had to do a bunch, I can't talk about why just yet, but I was doing a bunch of research on the Menendez brothers. And I remember one of Eric Menendez's interviews, he was talking about his like first night in prison. And I know it's kind of a different situation, but his food had a cockroach in it. And he thought it was a prank from somebody else in the system. No, food's just terrible. Food just had a cockroach in it. It wasn't anybody pulling his leg. It was what is. I also love Leanne. We were talking about Kaloi, and my friend Hannah is watching on TikTok, and she was like, "No, not the we." I thought that was funny. I miss it, dude. I miss college all the time. Somebody else says, "Oh, I want a glass of wine." Yes, I went with. I couldn't tell you what this is. I forgot already. White.
They have trail mix.
Yeah, it's yum. We had an amazing dinner. Pasta. So I have leftover wine, but typically for book club I bring something. So yeah, I saw somebody on Goodreads talk about the Norway chapter as well. So I tabbed chapter 12 to go back and read. I'm sure I will read through this eventually. She actually does the audiobook. Montross does the audiobook, and her voice, oh my god, it's so soothing. Like, she's great for audiobooks. Even if she doesn't want to keep doing this, I know what else she can do. It was wonderful to listen to because I wanted to listen and highlight along. So I will get back to it, but I definitely tabbed chapter 12 to revisit that. Better Neighbors. Amber.
I was just gonna say, going off of what Leanne was saying through like other books about the same thing. I was like, I think it's mentioned in the intro. She references the New Jim Crow, which that was like, I think, a book I read in May when I was doing like the read your own adventure marathon thing they were doing. That was one of the ones I read, and that was like, I was helpful reading this because I was able to use a lot of the knowledge I had learned from that in my response to what I was reading here. There's also another book called 23/7, which is solely about solitary confinement. I think the author's like Karamet Brown's, like almost like a weird spelling of Kermit. Angela Davis also. Let's see if there's any. I'm trying to look at my like one book stack right here, see if there's anything else that piques my brain. That like piques my brain. I was like, I know there's a couple others. I'll probably just put them in like the app. But yeah, I was just saying there's like, but yeah, anything by like Angela Davis, the New Jim Crow, those are two, and 23/7 would be, I think, like really like nice supplements to this as well, because it teaches you all, like, it focuses on kind of like the other parts of mass incarceration besides just the mental health side.
Yeah.
Like New Jim Crow relates how like mass incarceration now can be tied to Jim Crow and slavery back in like, you know, the late 1800s, early 1900s, and 23/7 is all about solitary confinement and the psychological effects that it can have on people from being in solitary confinement, which like at some point she goes into it about in here, which is like also using that. It's like, it's known to be like almost psychological torture for neurotypical normal sane people to be put into solitary confinement, like, and then you put somebody that has like either just like thinking anxiety, depression, because I'm just thinking like even for myself, when like there's times where like I have to be alone, like with anxiety, depression, ADHD, and the way places my brain can go if it's if I start spiraling in a negative form, and that's not even like taking into account any more serious mental illnesses that are also likely not medicated either, because that's not like they're probably medicating people in prison, because I know I have had friends that like have had issues with it. And so it's like to think about having like my depression and my anxiety and my ADHD all being unmedicated along with my PTSD,
right,
in a tiny little cell with no means of enrichment to distract myself, and just being alone with my thoughts, essentially.
Hell no.
Dear God, no.
Yeah.
Like and then to think like what some of like the traumas and psychological cycles of like trauma and abuse and violence that a lot of these people who do have the mental health problems that they talk about in here are going through, and having to be mostly alone. Like, I'm like, I can't even imagine what that has to be like for them. Like, one of my favorite things that she talks about here, and was also my therapist's, was she talks about at one point, where is it? Oh yeah, it's what is it called? It was in the Cook County Jail, with Montgomery, was like the Thinking for a Change program, where like I was telling my therapist, because it's like some of like the mentally ill detainees, they have like a CBT program where they meet 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, to help them, like, basically become like kind of focusing on mindfulness and processing their trauma. And like it's like says here, practice methods of changing their thoughts and assumptions in their life that lead to problematic behavior. And what she talks about, like one of the things they do is like, she has like the person leading it has them like lay like kind of write like a retrospective timeline of their life with like all these different major events. And so like, and because it kind of forces them like to sit with all the things they've done. And like some of the you have like some of them like just start almost crying after they read these timelines like in their therapy groups. Like one of them was like, you have this one man, because she's like, says that like 8 out of the 10 men in this group are Black. And she's like talking about this one, and he ended up having to go live with, first like he was living with his aunt, and then he was like at his grandma's house, and then child services took him from his grandfather and put him in a group home. And like he says, like one of the things he says, I didn't want to accept what was happening. I wanted to be with my grandma, not with these white people who kept bringing me to school. And I was like, so you already have like all this trauma that he's gone through with his family, and he finally finds like this like safe space where he feels comfortable. And then child services comes in and rips him away, and it's like, all right, now we're going to shove you into this environment where you're not among people who can relate to your lived experiences. And we're just going to add to the trauma that you have. And like, I was like, the system doomed him before he could even start. Like he was like, what was it, I think 14. And yeah, and it's like, because it's also like the concept of like also tying in like the toxic masculinity. And if you don't have any solid community support, because at one point she goes like, what I hear in your timeline is that how much you are alone. And as I was saying, it's like, so if like he doesn't have any community support either, he's not going to know how to really do anything in regards to interpersonal interactions, relationships, how to take care of himself. He's just going to, if he's in like all the only people he's seeing are the other people in like, either his group home or incarceration, that's who he's going to end up learning from. And because in jails and prisons, we don't like focusing on the rehabilitation side, those people aren't going to know any healthy, are going to less than likely know healthy habits, and then teach him those less than likely habits, and then the cycle continues, and then he moves on, and it just never ends. And like that was like that therapy program was just like something that like I think was really amazing that they're doing in this jail to like actually help them actually address and process and look at like all the stuff they've gone through, and hopefully can help them move forward in a healthier, like kind of like way that a lot of places, like even outside jails and prisons, aren't doing. But yeah, so it's like, that's why I was like, I think also what I really like is like just that whole concept. I wish more places had programs like that, because it also just helps just like to sit down, look at how everything, how the, and it's not even how much it wasn't even your fault. It was just the system and the culture and society you're living in that affects you and can doom you from the start, just because of like society, like the cycles of violence and generational trauma and generational violence and all of that, how you could be doomed before you even know
How to fix it.
anything.
Yeah.
So
Samantha, I love that your dog has made a reappearance. We love to see it.
oh my God.
Hi, sweet
her.
Benny.
Friend.
No.
Oh my God.
I think last time you were in a meeting, I don't remember if it was a month ago, the dog like sat like in your lap, and that's all we saw for a second.
Yeah.
10 out of 10 experience.
He felt like he needed to join again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
If he has
honestly
something to
amazed
say, I'll listen.
Winston, I'm honestly amazed Winston, my black cat, isn't like right here.
Yeah, I don't know where Hank
He
went.
tried for a second because I think he heard the voices, but now I don't know where he went.
I see your hand, Lauren. I wanted to make sure. I know you guys have been messaging stuff in the chat, but Catherine, is there any? I know you had your hand up at one point. Was there anything you wanted to say, or because I remember I think you took your emoji off, so I didn't know if you changed your mind.
Yeah, Leanne actually made a lot of the same points that I was going to make, so I just put my hand down because she handled it just fine.
You're fine. You can still chat if you want. I know Michelle put some stuff in the comments too, kind of piggybacking off of what Rafe had said. So if you guys can check the chat too, she's got some stuff in there, but if you can't, I'd be happy to kind of reiterate that. But also somebody else who has an orange cat, Lauren. We love to see it. I don't know where the cat went. Welcome to make appearance.
Orange cats.
So yeah, he's sitting. I've picked him up a few times. He probably is getting ticked off at me. But I wanted to talk about like the conversation that was happening in the chat, how people wanted to how people are seeking vengeance rather than like trying to like make sure that people were getting the help that they needed in prison and like trying to correct behaviors and stuff. I had a conversation with like someone in my life who didn't understand that, like, that I think of people in prison as people. Like, I think it's completely unethical that people in prison aren't allowed to vote and stuff. And he was saying like, well, why would we want these people to be able to like make decisions about our country and stuff? And I'm like, well, because they're people who live in this country.
Right.
And so I definitely think it's interesting the way that people view people in prison as not people, but as criminals, even if most of them are, like the overwhelming majority of them are just people who are victims of circumstance. So that was something I reflected on, is like, these are human beings, these are people who live in our country, and some people who don't even like speak the language of our country, you know, probably don't understand a lot of like why we do the things that we do in America, you know. So I don't know, I just wanted to say that.
Go ahead. Is this agreement, Amber? Is this our way of snapping? I love it.
Yes.
We jellyfishing right now? Because I love it.
Yeah, it's like I learned it from like, we would do it at like protests or like rallies and stuff. So it's like when like people are like saying something like you agree with, you just would kind of like do this, because it's also useful for like those of us, for people who had, because we for a while had a very high population of hard of hearing or deaf people attending our protests, because we have the National School for the Deaf here.
Yeah.
So that was like a thing that a lot of people would start doing, is like agreement, basically, like yes, agreement, or like I'm like heavily emphasizing whatever's being said.
Love that. Good to know. Okay, Lauren, We're giving you agreements. I love it. Ralph.
Sorry, I'm on my phone this time. This is weird. If you read anything, get to this. I think the first few pages of chapter 13 are worth reading, and that's all I'm going to say. It's a conversation that the author has with her children, with her own mother in the car, and
Oh wow.
it's really good. But it's talking about, is everyone in prison bad? Which is really the gist of the book. What got these people here? Not all of them are bad. Some of them just made bad choices, and some of them didn't do anything bad at all. Some of them, it was just their mental health. Some of them, they were having, I think we can all agree in a morbidly curious book club that's run by someone who does a lot of true crime stuff, that there are people who legitimately deserve to be in prison.
See, Anthony. Sorry.
However, I think that there's over 2.2 million people incarcerated in the United States. That's all I'm going to say.
I tabbed that as well. I think though, and I mentioned this earlier about some of the reviews being not as great, or 3 out of 5, because they felt that the author inserted herself a little bit too much, but I do feel like this one's a little bit more necessary than what we saw from
Absolutely.
previous books. Amber's favorite book, Hell in the Heartland. I'm just kidding. So I think it's a better place for it. I see. You're muted, but I see.
Just like, no, this one after going by Post-its.
I think it's, obviously I didn't read it, so I can't say for certain, but I will eventually, but I do think it's a better place for somebody to kind of insert themselves in their stories. Correct me if I'm wrong though.
Yeah, because I was saying, like, she talks about how she, like, I think it's like, if I remember correctly, she like runs a hospital for people that have mental health issues, who basically a lot of like judges and courts and jail send these people to her because they know that because of their mental health issues. So it's not so much her talking about herself. Right. It's kind of her talking. It's like her talking about herself, but more of like, as compared to Hell in the Heartland, where that was like a person talking about themselves in like a personal manner. Sure. This is talking about herself in the professional sense of like her experiences as like being a doctor, and things that have occurred within her hospital, and things that she's seen and done and experienced while within the confines of her hospital.
Right. Okay. That's good then.
Yeah, that's kind of like what it's more like. It's like her speaking more in like some of it does talk about, personal stuff, because, she is a woman that's going into some of these units that are going to be a little bit more, that are more like at one point, I think when she's kind of talking more about herself, I would say it's like at one point, it's like, I think it was in Cook County. She goes into, I think was called Unit 10, I think it was, or something like that. Division 10, which is like one of like, it's like kind of like the opposite of that, the therapy group in Montgomery County. It's like this, one of those like stereotypically you see a lot in TV shows, like the round robin things with like all the really like violent people who violent with like, the COs who are, more kind of like on a power trip, or have like the very toxic masculinity power trip. I need to assert myself over these prisoners, like type of environment. And I guess like at one point she talks about how they're talking to one prisoner about like his like issues, and like she looks up at one point and all of a sudden like there's a bunch of the men like, making like, or actually like jerking off to her being there. And she talks about like, how like the feelings that made her have being a woman in this environment, which I think is also a very valid thing to talk about, because that
feels necessary.
It's still tied to her professionality, because being a woman going into these places and doing that is something that's going to happen to her more than just this one time. And then I was also going to mention, we were talking about like, you know, all the people who are incarcerated, like I think Ralph says like the 2.4 million, something like that. It's like looking, it's like for me, it's like, you know, looking at the systems of like rehabilitation and like also restorative justice. Like, because for me, like a big thing, like I always like referencing, I have to read more about it, but it's like with Rwanda after their genocide, because that's another one of my hyperfixation. So if anybody ever wants to read about the Rwandan genocide, hello, I have many books that I can recommend to you.
I would.
I wrote a 22-page paper on it for my senior project in high school.
Put it in. Put it in the oh my god, message board.
The app?
On
yes,
yeah, people are allowed
yes.
to post in that. There's not a lot of messages going back and forth, and I'm sure people muted it after a while because there was a lot of notifications. But yeah, post whatever you want on there.
Okay, and but
it's not like
what they did is like
horrible.
They started doing this thing. It was like, you know, a lot of like the like normal Hutu civilians who were the people doing like the actual killing and maiming with the machetes. Like what, and then you have like a lot of like the Tutsis who either survived or had like majority of their family like, you know, killed. What it is like, you know, when they're like building, like rebuilding their houses and their communities, you have a lot of like this, they have these things called, I forgot the specific name of it is. It's a similar name to kangaroo court, but it's not kangaroo court. But it's basically what they do is they get in a circle and the person who's being accused sits in the middle, and the circle basically talks to this person in the middle, like all the things that they're being accused of and what they've done and how they've hurt whoever is bringing the charges against them. And then and like these are for more so it's like people who have shown like, you know, genuine remorse towards what they've done, which is for a lot of the civilians was like they're kind of goaded into it by a lot of like the higher ups in the government telling them that like if they were a Hutu and they didn't basically get involved in this genocide, then they were going to be killed as well. So it was either you could kill people or you could be killed. That was your two options during it. And like they can respond to these accusations and the feelings and like make their genuine response. And essentially it's kind of like a way to do a very like genuine, like addressing the issues and the problems and then being able to make a genuine apology. And then they what they do is they kind of like pass around the circle and to the accused in the middle, like this thing called banana beer, which apparently tastes terribly, but it's like kind of like their drink of community. It's like and so they get by them passing it around the circle and then giving it to the person in the middle. It's kind of like that communal sign that we've addressed the issues and we're like, you know, we're moving on. And then after that is like a lot of the Hutus would help the Tutsis rebuild their homes. They were doing all the labor on the homes for the Tutsis as like kind of also a way of being like, I know that I hurt you. I know that I caused all of this pain and suffering. So this is me doing a very literal attempt to help you rebuild your life. And so that's kind of like an example, sort of like restorative justice in that aspect as well. It's kind of like, you know, sometimes I think about it. Yes, there's very terrible people that have done stuff that deserve to be in some confines of something. But it's like, I'm like, but if we can have the people who are like, you know, victims of the Rwandan genocide, have the people who were, you know, may have nearly killed them or killed their family and loved ones doing some of this like restorative, like, you know, process and moving on past what happened. I think at least in even a smaller scale or a smaller amount, we as a country that's supposed to be this most civilized country on earth should be able to do the same. Right. But, you know, apparently who knows about that anymore, but you know. Yeah. So.
Lauren.
I really liked the point that we were making earlier about like Dr. Montgomery's like specific experience and stuff. There was a part where all of the people were in these like chain link areas where so she could see everybody. There was the boy with like a broken leg, and people that only like kind of got quickly talked to and interviewed a little bit, and they were the woman that she was with was asking like relevant questions and making assumptions and stuff, and getting, and I thought it was really interesting that part at the very end where Dr. Montgomery says like, I wanted to ask them more. I wanted to ask that boy why his leg was broken. I wanted to see if he needed immediate help. I wanted to ask these people like specific questions to go a little bit further. And I really liked that she had her input about like, it was not like the work that they're doing is valuable, but it's not enough.
Mm-hmm.
Hearing her say that, like, I also didn't mind like Jax inserting herself into the story. I thought it made the story a little bit more compelling. But I think that Dr. Montgomery does it in a much better way. So
Right.
yeah. So I just wanted to touch back on that. I liked that. Not
to hound on Jax Miller. I just remember that being, I didn't finish that book either. Not because I didn't like it. Not to hound on. I forgot there was a lot of people who did really in fact like that book. Yeah, I think I will definitely be finishing this at some point. Again, the audiobook was phenomenal. One thing that I didn't ask, was there anybody in here who didn't like this? I know there's only a few people in here, but there's typically either one or two, so I wasn't sure if anybody. I think pretty much everybody has given their input, so I wanted to make sure that there was also a space for somebody to mention their gripes with it or if they didn't like it. I think we're good. I think everybody enjoyed it, which is always a positive. I get really nervous sometimes. Yeah. Reading chat. I have heard that. So I know there was a chapter, so I'm assuming the chapter on Norway was about how Norway is doing it correctly, presumably. Do you think that how Norway is doing it is the way to do it? Like, do you think that that is something we should adopt and we should learn from and do? What were your thoughts on that part?
I think so. Sorry, someone else has their hand.
No, you're good.
You're
good. No, go ahead, Leanne, and then we'll have Catherine chime in.
Yeah, I think that was the right way to do it, just from reading it. But then again, I don't know how other prison systems are operating. So I was like, maybe there's another one. Yeah. But I think with where we're at now, well, she did make a point that I think Norway was like, had kind of the same system we do in the 80s or 90s, which was 30 years ago, 40 years ago. So in my head, I'm like, well, if we go down that path, that means in 30, 40 years, potentially we could have a much better system, but that's a long time.
Yeah.
So it's like 30 or 40 more years of trauma and just, yeah, but
people ending up in the wrong place.
Yes, exactly. So, but I do think it was a really good way to go about incarceration, or maybe folks who've done something illegal and then reforming and like, what's the word, that rehabilitating them back to be productive members of society.
For some reason, the 80s feel like 20 years ago, for some reason, to me. Like, I still think it's just forever the year 2000 in my brain, and I don't know why.
It makes me feel better about my age.
Yeah, somebody asked when I graduated high school recently, and I almost didn't want to answer them. Catherine. You are muted. Okay.
I really liked the stuff where she talked about the Scandinavian countries. There was more than just Norway there. Too, she jumps back and forth between a couple of them, and she compares like how they intake prisoners with what Lauren was saying earlier about the really quick questioning that was happening. The first thing that they do in Sweden is a needs assessment. So when you are arrested, they do a complete needs assessment on you to find out, do you have a job? Do you have a place to live? Is the place that you live problematic? You know, is that where you're going to commit crimes because you're around people that you do crimes with there? Do you need a new place to live? Do you need job training? All of that stuff, mental health services. And so that's the first thing they do. And then you get that all the way through. And then the guard to prisoner ratio is like 1 guard to every 1.4 prisoners. So you kind of have like a case manager and somebody who is like your counselor or your guide almost as you go through this system, making sure that you're getting to the classes and trainings that you need and want. You're connected to your family. She has a whole chapter where she talks about how important connection is to other people and how critical it is to your overall health and well-being. And how they're getting that as well. And then they, for like the last portion of their, what is it called? Your sentence. You're not even in prison anymore. You're in a halfway house, working in the community that you are going to be a part of when you leave. And you have basically all the same rights. You just have to sleep there every night. But you're working and you're participating in community and society. And she put some very clear numbers in there about how similar our recidivism rates were and how much better, I think Norway specifically, how much better their recidivism rate is. I mean, it dropped enormously. She uses the word like plummeted, I think, you know, when they started doing this new thing. So I think that the way that they're doing it in Scandinavian countries is absolutely what we could be doing in this country, but I don't think until, you know, individual minds are changed that it's going to make much of a difference in this country. We're just going to keep on going down this path because we have very clear evidence that, you know, solitary confinement is one of the worst things you can do. But a lot of people are stuck there because for their own safety, you know, they get brought in with a mental health issue or they're deaf, and to protect them from the rest of the population because they're vulnerable, they get put in solitary confinement. And the science is clear that it's so bad for them, but we do it anyway. And she makes that point a couple times in the book that we still choose to do it in light of the evidence. So it seems a little bit hopeless to me.
Almost too what's the word? Too late, like just we're past the point of no return almost.
Yeah, I would say too, this book kind of like, I've heard about, you know, abolitionists and stuff when it comes to prison and things like that. And I've always been like, well, yeah, but what do you do? I think this book kind of made me an abolitionist. It really did. I have to admit that it is definitely a better way than what we're doing right now. Instead of ruining people's lives and forcing them to live on the fringes.
Yeah, it was a very depressing topic. Service. Yeah. Don't remember which county it was and how community members are the ones providing services within jail. Oh.
I meant country.
But even then, like, oh, there's Hank. Hi, buddy. Do you have anything to add? Or are you just here to bite stuff? I think he's just here to bite stuff. Was that all, Catherine? Was that all that you wanted to mention? Stop it.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. Go ahead, Amber. You are muted.
Regards to what Catherine was saying about like the things that we do in like solitary and like how terrible is like when in I think it's chapter 7. She visits the federal prison, the Florence ADX in Colorado. It's like the only federal supermax prison in the country. It's the highest security prison in the nation. And she's talking about like some of the things that, and I think there's like another one she talks about like how, like I would say, talks about like some of like the terrible things that happen. Is like there's this man in South Carolina, actually, apparently, was caught having posted on Facebook on 38 different days. And as punishment, he received 37 and a half years in solitary confinement, also lost the right to have telephone visitation or canteen privileges for the next 74 years, and was forced to forfeit his 69 days of good time. He earned days that are removed from an end of a person's sentence as a reward for good behavior. Says these kinds. Says they're also ridiculous. This journalist points out, if a South Carolina inmate caused a riot, took 3 hostages, murdered all of them, stole their clothes, and then escaped, he could still wind up with fewer level 1 offenses than an inmate who updated his Facebook every day for 2 weeks, which I thought was insane.
Yeah.
And then she talks about like Florence ADX, like it says here, like one of the like the quote that stood out for me is like it says it's the ADX was not designed for humanity, explained Robert Wood, a former warden of the prison. Let's be candid here. It's not designed for rehabilitation, period, end of story. It's a clean version of hell. It says they're all prisoners at ADX are permitted to send and receive letters. However, all their correspondence in both directions is opened and read. And in addition, all their incoming mail is scanned and then destroyed. They only receive the scans of the letters that have been sent to them, but not the actual letters themselves. Also, the media is not welcome at ADX. Those who would provide any oversight to make sure no human rights violations are happening are also not welcome there. It says ADX has allowed only one single visit by human rights groups, despite opening 2 decades ago. And 2 UN special rapporteurs on torture have been requested to visit this prison and have been denied.
How's that even legal?
Yeah, it says, right?
We're minutes right now.
And then like they talk, and then there was another prisoner that got sent there who's named, I guess, Jesse Wilson. He was the first in a Mississippi prison. And he was, I guess, incarcerated at this, what they call Unit 32, and it's a notorious Parchment State penitentiary. And I guess it says it was like the ACLU says it's one of the worst environments in the nation. It says in 2002, they filed against the Mississippi Department of Corrections on behalf of their death row prisoners, saying that the prisoners were held 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in cells where summer heat indexes were reaching 120 degrees. The toilets didn't work. The housing areas were routinely awash in sewage from broken plumbing, and they were subjected day and night to the ravings of the severely psychotic prisoners that had whose mental illnesses were left untreated. And later on, when Wilson got transferred to ADX, he goes, one such lie about it is that the government claims that mentally ill inmates are not housed at ADX. He's like, I heard them say that they do not have insane inmates housed here. It was like somebody from like Congress on the radio. He's like, I have not slept in weeks because of these non-existent inmates beating on the walls and hollering all night. And the most non-insane of people smearing feces in their cells. And so it's like he talked, and like he's like one of the few people who managed to speak out about, I guess, ADX and actually have it like make it publicly to the public without being like censored or like, you know, having any of his like claims are detracted or anything. Says he, because he says he's I guess he got sent to ADX for fatally stabbing another death row inmate in Unit 32. And then so he received a nothing short of another life sentence. And he got sent to ADX at it says it looks like he's got sent to ADX in like his early 20s and is now serving life without parole in complete solitary isolation at ADX. He's in his early 20s and he's going to spend the rest of his life not seeing a single person. Yep. And like for me, it was interesting to read about ADX. Is like, I always say it's like weird, me being as politically left as I am, that I still like love like the true crime TV shows like Criminal Minds and FBI and all of those. And I'm like, I like to think that sometimes like that's kind of like, if my brain is kind of like, well, we wish things could be like a little bit better and kind of like that. And a lot of times I hear them reference, you know, Florence Supermax or ADX or something. And I've never like, I know that it's like, you know, this really, really super, super high level prison, but like I never really knew anything about it. I just hear it referenced in shows or true crime documentaries or things of that nature. So for me, it was like also kind of interesting to see these little snippets about it, and then reading just those little snippets then makes me realize why I've heard so little about it in real life, because they don't let anybody learn about it because of the shit that they're doing. And I'm like, oh, okay. Now I understand why, like when I hear these references in these shows, that's why they're being made like they're made. Huh. Lovely.
Off topic. Does everybody in this book club have a cat? I see like
I have 4.
Oh god.
I got jealous that y'all had your cats and mine didn't have anything to do with me. So I went
Like
and
3
got her.
cats on the camera right now, and it's making me so happy. Stop it, mommy.
I'm like, I don't.
Chris is like, cats. There's a cat here. There was a cat with Leanne.
There's one.
I have a dog who acts like a cat. Yeah, we have 2.
I'm like, I know there's one there sleeping in the cat tree. I know one is currently in my bedroom. After this, I have to go open the door because the end of June, beginning of July, he nearly gave me a heart attack because he had a urinary blockage. That
we've had issues.
$1,500 later, he feels better. But now I have to like feed him. Yeah. And he's almost 10. But it's like, I have to, at night I feed him wet food, and I have to close the door to my bedroom because everybody else wants to eat it because nobody else gets wet food. But his is like the urinary wet food. So also it's expensive. So he gets to have a little bit of time to himself in my bedroom so he can eat his like, you know, special wet food. And then Winston, my fat boy, gets mad because he wants to have the food. Even though it's like, I'm like, sir, you're literally being fed the same exact dry food. It's just in a different bowl. And then he looks at me like, but it's that, see, it means that's different. It's in a different bowl.
I'll take that over a screaming child any day.
Right. I'm like, and also I was telling people, I'm like, that the emotional trauma through my having Dandelion being in the hospital with his urinary blocks. And I'm like, it's bad enough with a cat, and like y'all want me to have a child, like, and the emotional stress that comes with that. I'm like,
no.
Mm-mm.
You are a menace, I need. Anyway, I'm sorry. Talking about kids. Okay, don't drink that, please.
Also a mood.
Is there anything else y'all wanted to I mean, we can go on about facts about this book all night, because there's just I was underlining it for a while but had to stop because I just felt like, you know, it was the whole damn page.
What made you think that we could go on forever? What gave you that idea?
That and Ghosts of the Tsunami were both highlighted to all hell, but
what gave you that idea?
That one, if you haven't read though, I definitely recommend. That might be I am gonna end up doing a poll at the end of the year on the Morbidly Curious book club site, just like of all the books, and see which one was everyone's.
I was saying there's also that author Richard Lloyd Perry. He also wrote a book called I think it's like People Who Eat Darkness, which is really, really, really good. That was like my first book by him, and I didn't know originally that he was the one who wrote Ghost of the Tsunami. I think it was until like actually when we were reading it for the book club, and so I just saw like the author's name written out. And I was like, oh, it's the dude.
Which People Who Eat Darkness is probably one of the, which is morbid to say because it's a true crime case, but one of the coolest book titles I've ever heard.
Right. It reminds me of like, what is it? People Under the Stairs.
Yeah, it's like, ooh, this is weird. I like it. I'm very glad though that the general consensus of this month's book, and I don't know if you guys know about this, but I'm sure you do. But let me pull it up because I haven't looked at it in a while. We also just surpassed 1,800 members, which is bananas. I think it's under meetings. Let me double check. Yeah, it is. So, well, it would be books we've read. That makes more sense. Yes. Let me show you. I'm going to put this in a new tab so you guys don't judge how many tabs I currently have open, because it's a lot. So if you go over to our book club's website and go to books we've read, you can see all the books that we have read, average rating for the books, and then our club's average rating, which I think is really, really neat. Man, y'all did not like Six Women at Salem. I never finished that book. Never finished it. So this is pretty average, but that's a neat little thing that you can check out. I also should have showed you this. I did pick out, I'm sure you guys saw this, but just to make sure. Should be quicker at this. So I did put this in the messages tab, but I pretty much, based on books that we had a poll open for and based on books that we want to read on our book club's website, I kind of just picked the rest of the year's books because after a while, it made sense based on stuff we want to read and then based on some of the poll answers that we had. So obviously we just read Waiting for Echo. Next book, I'm very, very excited about The Unidentified. Haven't checked the ratings out for this one yet, but I think it's pretty decent reviews. I don't know this author, but I am very down to read about our obsession with the unexplained. It's a very big part of why I started this book club. It's books like this that I've had for a while and have just wanted to read. I'm here to learn about Bigfoot, that's all I want. I wonder if there's even
road trip to my state for Bigfoot.
Hey man, I'm down. I have buddies who out of Hickory area, North Carolina, have a Bigfoot hunting TV show. That is actually a thing. And I've been out there with them before, and you know what? I believe, dude. He's fucking out there. I can't deny it. I love it.
I have a cat named Mothman, so y'all can come here and we can meet Mothman.
I love it. Well, I need to come up to the Pacific Northwest anyway. I need to have some of the Helm family pizza. So I'm very excited to read about that. And I read Unmask Alice recently, and I just had to throw it in here for you guys to read. It's probably my favorite book of the year. Holy shit, it's so good. And I just posted a review about it, and the author DM'd me on Instagram thanking me for having such a positive review on it, which makes me teary-eyed. So anyway, this is up on the messages tab. This is what we're reading for the rest of the year. I am very excited about all this. I'm very excited.
Does anybody want to see my current favorite true crime book I'm reading?
Yes.
Okay, hang on. Let me go grab it.
Stop the recording. Also, you guys are welcome to post stuff in this messages tab if you want. We don't have a Discord. I've had a pretty awful experience with Discord and ensuring that people don't put horrible things in it. So it's very hard to manage, and it's very hard to ensure that people are in there for good reasons. So I haven't really haven't done that yet. I don't really have the time to moderate that. So for now, if you want to start a discussion on anything, like if you see an article that you really like, feel free to post it in the messages board. Consider it like a messages board for people to just comment stuff. And we'd be happy to discuss it or chat about it. I may make a Discord at some point if I get enough people willing to spend their free time moderating, but that's down the line. But I want to hear what you have to say, Amber. I'm just going to wrap it up really quick. And then, yeah, thank you guys so much for coming, and thank you for discussing this. I'm glad that it was generally liked, and I will get to it eventually. I promise I will, because I do feel like there's a lot to learn from this. I still have a lot of questions, so I will absolutely be finishing it. Oh, thank you for answering some people in the TikTok chat. I'm so sorry. Yeah, really looking forward to reading the next one. Thank you guys so much for being here. If you would like to continue hanging out, we will be here. I'm sure I'll continue chatting about stuff. But yeah, thank you guys. I really appreciate it, and I will see you next month. It does start at 8 p.m. next month, I believe.
Yes.
Just check the meetings tab. Some nights I have it a little bit later. Yeah, 8 p.m. And then, yeah. Awesome. Thank you guys.
I was saying, this is the book.
Oh my God. Okay, so that's on my list. That is
It's
on my
so
list
good.
to read. I
So good.
just need to pick that up.